Hello and welcome to today's webinar, hosted by Food Ingredients First and sponsored by Lactalis Ingredients. Thank you for joining us and a warm welcome to all of our viewers from around the world. I'm Louis Gore-Langton, editor at CNS Media, and I'll be your moderator for today's session, Casein in Focus, Market Insight and Functionalities in Processed and Analogue Cheese. In recent years, the market for processed and analogue cheeses has experienced significant growth, driven by rising demand for high-quality, cost-effective dairy alternatives. But will this momentum continue? Today, we'll explore the latest market trends and the role of rennet casein, a key protein that influences the texture and flavor of processed and analog cheeses. We're joined today by two experts from Lactalis Ingredients. Firstly, you have Michael Le Denmar, who is a food engineer with a PhD in food science. He supports clients in recipe development and product optimization, drawing on experience in both dairy retail and ingredient applications. Also joined by Carolee Palais, who is a product manager overseeing milk powders, caseins, and cheeses for food applications. She holds degrees in agronomy and business management, specializing in food industry marketing. Welcome to both of you. We'll begin today with your presentation and follow up with a Q&A session. Over to you.
Hello, everyone. So first, I would like to present some few figures about Lactalis Ingredients. So Lactalis Ingredients is a global producer of whey and milk ingredients located in the west of France. We are offering a wide range of milk and whey powders, so including milk and whey powders, dairy fats, cheeses, and proteins such as casein, WPC, WPI, MPC, MPI, which we sell in over 100 countries. So Lactalis Ingredients, in few numbers, it's around 1,500 employees, a turnover of 1.5 billion euros in 2024, and 18 production sites, mostly located in France. So this will be the agenda for this webinar. So first, we'll take a look at the processed cheese market. We will then focus on the functionalities of rennet casein and its crucial role in processed and analog cheese manufacturing. Next, we will explore the principle of analog cheese production. In another section, we will discuss milk proteins used in cheese formulations. And finally, we'll share an example of a pilot scale production. So let's begin with the processed cheese market. So first, I would like to specify that the following data are exclusively retail data and do not include food service. So this graph shows the evolution of the processed cheese market from 2020 to 2024 and forecasts up to 2029. So in 2024, the global processed cheese market stands at 2.96 million tons. Over the past 5 years, the market has grown by 1% annually. For the next 5 years, we expect it to continue growing at the same rate, reaching 3.11 million tons by 2029. If we are looking at the market distribution by region, we can observe that more than the half of the processed cheese market is concentrated in Europe and North America, the two birthplaces of processed cheese. The market is expected to grow slightly, but in the coming years. However, this growth will likely be driven by Asia, Oceania, and with an estimated annual growth rate of 3% over the next 5 years. So the processed cheese market is growing and it's influenced by several trends. So the first one is the product and flavor innovations. So today innovation goes beyond composition to include texture and taste, such as, for example, ultra melting textures. Manufacturers are introducing new flavors like truffle, chili, black garlic, or exotic herbs and spices. Also, new type of packaging are created. Portions are adapted to modern consumption habits with convenient formats like pods or mini snacks. The second trend is the culinary use and the food service. So processed cheese is no longer just a household product. It plays a key role in street food and modern gastronomy. So it's used, for example, in gourmet burgers or reinvented grilled cheese sandwiches. Processed cheese are now increasingly found in ready-to-cook meal kits and premium prepared dishes. So you can also see more and more of ready-to-use cheese sauces for fast food. And in addition, delivery services make processed cheese easy to use in professional kitchens. We can also observe another trend, especially in Europe and in North America, the clean label and the naturalness in the food industry. So now consumers demand more transparency, pushing manufacturers to reduce additives and preservatives in their formulas. So recipes are simplified, focusing on the natural ingredients and the high-quality based cheeses. Brands are adopting sustainability strategies to show the local milk sourcing and preferring, for example, pasture-raised or organic milk. This slide is showing a global overview of the processed cheese market. So on the right, in Americas, the market is expected to grow slightly in the coming years. It includes processed cheese in jars or in slices and analog cheese for pizzas. In Europe, you can find mainly processed cheese in slices and portions. And the processed cheese market is a relatively stable market with a slight growth. In Africa and Middle East region, you can buy a lot of different types of processed cheese, such as jars, blocks, slices, portions, influenced by the colonial history and globalization. So, for example, former French colonies like Morocco consume portions like in Europe, while Saudi Arabia prefers processed cheese in jars like in the US. And this region is expected to be quite dynamic in the coming years. Asia and Southeast Asia, so this region is expected to grow the most, with a CAGR of plus 3% from 2025 to 2029. The cheese consumption focuses on analog cheese in blocks or in shredded forms, as well as cheese lollipops. So concerning the type of caseins, the general market, we can use 90 mesh rennet casein. So in some regions like Central America, we can also use 30-60 mesh caseins. And in some other regions like Asia, Asia is demanding a highly functional casein with a strict criteria for stretchability and remelting after cooking. So we can conclude that a simple product like processed cheese can take many forms depending on the needs and the preferences of each region on the world. So I will now hand over to Michael, who will talk about the more technical aspects of the casein.
Thank you, Coralie. So let's start first with some input about casein, the key protein in the structure of analog cheese and processed cheese. Sorry. So in raw milk, casein is organized in micelles. Here you can see a simplified representation of the casein micelle structure. The micelles have a diameter ranging from 100 to 200 nanometers. So this is a large protein, in fact, and that's because casein is, in fact, an aggregate of protein. Casein micelles are made of 4 different casein units, some hydrophobic, namely alpha S1, alpha S2, and beta casein, and one is hydrophilic, the kappa casein. In the structure of the aggregate, there is a specific distribution with the hydrophilic casein, so the kappa casein, located specifically at the outer layer of the macrostructure. And this is how a particle which is made up of mainly hydrophobic components is turned into a water-soluble protein. Another specific characteristics of the casein micelles is their high content in calcium and phosphorus. This is due to the calcium phosphate, which binds to the amino acid residues, contributing to the cohesion of the aggregate. Now, let's have a look at the transformation of the milk into cheese. Milk is a liquid solution of casein micelle, and it gets changed into a gel after adding the rennet. Rennet hydrolyzes the glycomacropeptide, called GMP, from the kappa casein. This alters the hydrophobic balance of the whole casein micelle. The attractive hydrophobic interactions become more important than the repulsive interactions, allowing the caseins to aggregate. In cheese making, the whey is separated from the cheese curd. In the whey, you will have the globular proteins, also called whey proteins, and the GMP. And in the cheese curd, you will have the aggregated casein. Processed cheese making is in fact a second transformation of the cheese. So let's see now which kind of transformations are involved during processing, during processed cheese making. The chemical action of the melting salts combined with heating and shearing leads to 2 transformations. At first, the peptidation. This is a destructuring mechanism. Divalent calcium ions are exchanged with monovalent sodium ions or potassium ions from the melting salts. And this ion exchange breaks the ionic bridges within the casein structure. And it causes the micelles to open and finally to aggregate, to dissociate. And this leads to liquefaction, as you can see on the picture in the illustration. The second transformation is the creaming. This time, this is a restructuring mechanism. At hot temperature, the strengthened hydrophobic interactions between protein cause an aggregation of the casein subunits. And this aggregation leads to a viscosity increase, as you can see again on the picture to illustrate what's happening. This slide is just showing you the effect of the melting salt. This is an experiment that we did in the lab. We added increasing amount of phosphate into a solution of micellar casein. And you can see on the left, so we start from a white solution, turbid and white solution, and progressively the solution gets completely transparent with increasing amount of melting salt. And this is due, in fact, to the size reduction of the casein as a result of the peptidization. The casein particles become eventually so small that they do not diffract the light anymore, making the solution transparent. So now I would like to review with you the technological parameters which are impacting or potentially impacting the peptidization. The first one is the accessibility of the melting salt to the proteins. In fact, yes, the melting salt have to be in contact with the protein in order to put in place the ion exchange. Then the second parameter is the type of melting salt, the type of protein, sorry, excuse me. Of course, we've been explaining that before, the peptidization works with casein. So the ratio casein to whey is important, casein to whey protein is important, and even the source of protein is important. For your knowledge, with rennet casein, for instance, you can expect a rate of peptidization of 100%, 100%, so complete peptidization. This is not something you can reach, with cheese, because with cheese, the casein will be peptized to only 80 to 85%. The third parameter is the type of melting salt. Indeed, you can use different types of melting salt. You have the possibility to use citrate or different kinds of phosphate like orthophosphates, pyrophosphates, or polyphosphates. And in fact, to make it short, the melting salts which are efficient for peptidization are polyphosphate and citrate. The pH is also important. So the higher the pH, the more intense the peptidization can be. And finally, the temperature and heating time. The higher the temperature, the longer the heating time, the more intense the peptidization. So now a quick insight into the creaming mechanism. Creaming can be monitored by observing the changes in viscosity after cooking of the recipe. In the first minutes after cooking, so you see here the green curve. In the first minutes after cooking, while the melted cheese is maintained at around 80 degrees, it looks like nothing happens. The viscosity keeps low and steady. This is in fact an activation phase. Then the viscosity increases sharply. This is an aggregation phase. And in the third phase, the viscosity will level up to a plateau. This is the creaming plateau, which corresponds to the balance between aggregation and destruction of the growing aggregates under the shearing effect. After some time, the viscosity may start to increase again. So here we are in the red part of the curve. This is the over-creaming stage. This is generally a phenomenon to be avoided because it can lead to processing issues and it can affect adversely the texture of the finished products. Several technological parameters can impact the creaming. At first, again, the type of melting salt. And here, the melting salt which are particularly efficient to promote the creaming, that's typically the pyrophosphate. The degree of ripening of the cheese is also a parameter. Some ripened cheese can help to accelerate the creaming effect. The pH is also a parameter. So with the optimal pH for creaming being somewhere around 5.5, 5.6, 5.7. The addition of rework. By rework, we mean a finished product that we use at small percentage in the recipe. So a finished product from the previous production that you use in the new production. And this will act, in fact, as a catalyzer. And the last parameter will be the stirring conditions. So temperature and stirring and shear intensity. So now we'll focus on the manufacturing of analog cheese. Analog cheese is what we call an imitation cheese, and very often it's an imitation pizza cheese. By imitation pizza cheese, we mean that, in fact, we are trying to reproduce the properties of a real cheese or the natural cheese. And this reference cheese is, in fact, the low moisture mozzarella. So in Lactalis, we are producing different kinds of low moisture mozzarellas. And basically, you can keep in mind that there are two kinds of two main kinds of low moisture mozzarella. And here on the left, you have a typical standard low moisture mozzarella. And you can see that the dry matter here is at 52.4 gram per 100 gram. And the fat in dry matter is at just under 41%. And besides this first kind of low moisture mozzarella, you have a high fat low moisture mozzarella with typically a dry matter slightly higher. So here the dry matter is at 53.5%, and the fat in dry matter is clearly higher, above 46%. So the reference product that we want to imitate, in fact, we could describe this product as is. For the standard fat, the dry matter will be between 50 and 53%. The fat in dry matter will be comprised between 39 and 42, with protein content at 25, a low amount of sugar, so some lactose remaining and some galactose as well, a pH at 5.3. Besides that, for a high-fat product, the dry matter will be comprised between 52 and 54 gram per 100 gram. The fat in dry matter will be between 45 and 48%. The protein is pretty much the same, 24 instead of 25. The sugar content is exactly the same, and pH as well. So what you can remember is that you need a lot of protein, 25%. And this is mainly casein. So if you want to imitate this product, you need to take a lot of protein in your recipe and a lot of casein. The amount of sugar is reduced, but there is some galactose, which is quite reactive to Maillard reaction. And this is interesting because this will be responsible for the typical blistering behavior of the mozzarella during heating, during cooking of the pizza. And the last point is the pH. So the pH of mozzarella is very typical, close to 5.3. And this is because this pH will correspond to a certain degree of demineralization of the casein, which in turn enables the gel matrix to be transformed into a fibrous structure. I would like to show you now what is the microstructure of the mozzarella, so that we also see what kind of structure we are trying to imitate. And here, this is a picture taken with a confocal laser microscope. And in red, you have the fat. The fat is stained in red. And in green, you have the protein. So on the left, you have the image obtained with the curd, so not the finished product. And on the right, you have the image of the finished mozzarella after stretching. You can see a clear change on the structure of the fat on this image, because in the curd, so on the left part of the slide, you see that the particles are distributed in round globules, a lot of round globules distributed within the matrix, the protein matrix. And it's not the case anymore after stretching. This time, the fat is not emulsified in small droplets. It's rather destabilized. In fact, it corresponds to a semi-destabilized structure of fat in fat vacuoles. It's not fat globules anymore, it's fat vacuoles. And this is an important point, because in fact, once the mozzarella block will be shredded, these fat vacuoles get easily released from the protein matrix, allowing for a rapid oiling off as soon as the fat is heated over its melting point, so 50 to 60 degrees. And the specific oiling off properties of the low moisture mozzarella is a consequence of this coarse dispersion of the fat. So something that we will try to imitate when we make an analog cheese. The second part of the observation of the structure will be about the structure of the protein matrix. So here you can see the two images at the top, what the structure of the curd looks like. It's a randomly aggregated structure, so the casein are randomly aggregated, and there is a very spectacular change after stretching. The random organization gets transformed into fibers. So the protein, the casein, get organized in long and aligned fibers. And the fat granules are just entrapped within these long fibers. So again, here, that's what we are going to imitate when we will produce the analog cheese. We'll try to obtain these fibers from the casein. So after this parallel with the low moisture mozzarella, I come back to our main interest today, the analog cheese. And first, a word about the formulation of the analog cheese. And my question is, what are the concerns when formulating the analog cheese? So I've been insisting already a lot on this, but you need to take a lot of proteins to make the analog cheese, and not any kind of protein. It's a precise kind of protein that you need. You need to take casein, because as I said just before, it's the property of casein to be able to form these fibers. Then you will need to take some melting salts. And in fact, the melting salt will play the role which is played by the pH in the real mozzarella. You will expect a peptization from the addition of the melting salt, but you will try to avoid as much as possible the creaming, because creaming means heat stability. So it will not behave as a real mozzarella. And the type of melting salt which are interesting for the formulation of analog cheese, that's polyphosphates or citrates or a combination of both. Then when you are preparing your formula, you will adapt the fat level depending on the intensity of the oiling off that you are targeting. So you will be somewhere between 45 and maximum 50%. And you will adjust the pH as well, because the pH is a key parameter to control the texture, both the texture at cold temperature when you are shredding the product, and the texture during heating, cooking of the cheese on the top of the pizza. Now, what are the concerns for the process management? So after formulation, we're talking about process. The first thing is to make sure that you will get a complete solubilization of the casein. So that's something which is really key. This point must not be overlooked. It's key to obtain the solubilization of the rennet casein. Otherwise, you won't get any functionality. No firmness, no melting. And on top of that, you will be at risk to have a sandy texture if the casein powder is not solubilized. So this is something which is important. You need to pay attention about the dispersion of the casein and to give sometimes for the full solubilization of the casein. Now, a word about the management of the fat dispersion in the recipe. What you are targeting is to get a coarse emulsion. So we will make all our best to avoid forming a fine emulsion. And so this means that we will play on the shearing effect. High shear is not a good idea as soon as the fat is incorporated. The cooking temperature. So you want to promote here the fibrous structure and not the creaming. And this is obtained when you cook at a rather low temperature, typically between 70 and 75 degrees. A word about the shearing effect. In fact, you must consider that you have two steps. At the beginning, when you're preparing the recipe before heating, when you are mixing all the ingredients together, at this stage, high shear is okay, because it will help to have a good dispersion and it will promote the maximum contacts between the melting salt and the proteins. But in the second step, when we are cooking the recipe, then we must reduce a lot the shearing effect, because keep in mind that we want to keep a very coarse dispersion of the fat, and we want to avoid also the creaming. And for this reason, processing with a cutter, so a Stefan cooker, for instance, is trickier than with a twin screw cooker. Option number one for me would be cooking with a twin screw cooker. And the last and final step is to make sure that you will have a fast cooling. So with the fast cooling, you will avoid promoting the creaming, in fact. I would like to share with you some data from studies reported by Tim Giddy, one of the renowned scientists in the processed cheese technology. So here is a study about analog cheese. We can see the impact of the processing parameters. So it's one recipe of analog cheese, always the same recipe, but processed in 5 different conditions. So the first 3 trials, the first 3 lines, in fact, in the table corresponds to recipes which have been cooked in a Stefan cooker at different speeds. And the last 2 trials have been cooked in a twin screw cooker, Blendtec cooker, also at different speed of the Auger this time. And I won't go into all the data here. I just want to point out one result. You see that when we increase the speed in the Stefan cooker, we reduce dramatically the melt. So it's not anymore a pizza cheese at this stage. It doesn't melt enough to be considered as a good pizza cheese. This slide now is about the processing time. Still the same experiments, still the same recipe, and they made a short and longer heating time. And you see here that with the short cooking, we managed to get to preserve a very good melting property, so a typical pizza cheese behavior. But as soon as we get a longer heating time, 8 minutes or longer, we lose the melting properties. So this is why it's important, in fact, to make a short heating time. Still from the same paper, we will talk about now about the processing, about the heating temperature. So, and I put 2 graphs. On the left, you could see that by increasing the cooking temperature, you get some interesting effect, because you will increase the firmness of the cold product. So it will be firmer, so easier to shred. But on the right, you can see that by increasing the cooking temperature, we lose again a lot of melting properties. And above 75 degrees, it's complicated to make sure that you will have a good melting of your analog cheese. So the recommendation, as I've been saying before already, is to cook between 70 and 75 degrees. So we'll complete our presentation today with a synthetic review of the milk protein that you can take in your recipes. And we'll go through the flow diagrams of the different types of milk proteins. The first milk protein that I will present is rennet casein. To make rennet casein, we'll start from liquid skim milk, in which we will add rennet, and typically now it's microbial rennet. Adding rennet will cause the coagulation, and from the coagulated milk, we'll separate the curd from the sweet whey. And the curd will not be dried like this. It will undergo several washing operations to remove the lactose and the soluble minerals. After that, it will be dried and sometimes grinded to get a fine powder. Now, acid casein. So acid casein will follow pretty much the same flow diagram with a noticeable difference, although, because we don't add rennet anymore. Instead of that, we'll add acid. So the addition of acid down to will lower the pH down to 4.6 or even lower, which will make an acid curd, an acid coagulation, will separate again the curd from the acid whey, and the acid curd will be washed to remove lactose and soluble minerals, and dried and grinded as well. Now I move to the third protein, which is caseinate. So caseinate is a much more transformed protein, in fact, compared to rennet casein or acid casein. To make caseinate, in fact, you don't start directly from skim milk, but you start from an acid casein, and you have two options. Option number one is that you can use directly the wet curd, in which you will add alkali, and you will dilute it to make a real solution which can be spray dried. So this will make a spray dried caseinate. Option two is to start from acid casein powder. So this time you will add also alkali and water, but you won't get a solution. You will prepare a pasty product which can be extruded and dried again to make extruded caseinate. So this time it's not a spray dried caseinate. So the properties of the powder are not exactly the same. It's the same composition, but the physical properties of the powders are not the same. The fourth and last type of proteins is the milk protein concentrate, to which I would add the micellar casein. So this time, this is, we could say, native milk proteins. We start again from skim milk, but we don't add anything. In fact, we just separate the protein by membrane filtration techniques, and so we'll get a permeate on one side and a retentate concentrated in protein, which will be purified by diafiltration, then concentrated and spray dried to obtain a powder. Just a word to explain the difference between micellar casein and total milk protein concentrate. The difference rely on the type of membrane that we are using to make the separation of the proteins. I will describe first the production of the micellar casein. So to make the micellar casein, on the left of the slide here, you can see that we are using a microfiltration membrane with pore size between 0.1 and 10 micron. With such membranes, everything will pass through. So all the components of the liquid skim milk will pass through except the casein. So that means that the retentate will be highly concentrated in casein, and in the powder, in the ingredient that you can buy, you will have at least 92% of casein. That's not the same with MPC. This time we are using an ultrafiltration membrane, so with smaller pore size, 10 times smaller, in fact. And due to this smaller pore size, this time the soluble proteins will also be kept in the retentate, which means that in the finished product, you will get the same composition as the composition of milk at the beginning. So 80% of casein instead of 92 in the micellar casein. That's why, in fact, micellar casein could be something more interesting for the formulation of processed cheese or analog cheese because of its high content in casein. And this will be our conclusion. We'll see the interest of the different types of proteins, starting with the rennet casein. So something very simple, the rennet casein, that's the referent protein source, really the referent for the formulation of processed cheese. And I insist really for the analog cheese, it's, I would say, even the only option. And what will you get from the rennet casein if you add it in your recipe? So it will improve the firmness, and in the analog cheese especially, it will bring the meltability and the stretchability, the unique properties of rennet casein. And keep in mind that rennet casein alone is just like sand. In fact, in your recipe, you need to combine them with melting salts, otherwise you won't get any functional properties. It won't be solubilized and it won't be functional. We move to the acid casein now. So acid casein, that's interesting to improve the spreadability in some recipes, especially in spreadable processed cheese like triangles, for instance, or jars. But it reduces the firmness. In some recipes, typically in processed cream cheese, so specific processed cheese, due to the pH, the acid casein is the only option. Then you cannot use rennet casein. I move now to MPC or MPI. Okay, it's a source of protein, but keep in mind that first you have 20% of whey protein, which is not functional and can even bring some issues in the product, in the texture of the product, and it's clearly less functional than rennet casein, and can bring some drawbacks as well, like stickiness for slices. And due to the lactose content, 4.5% of lactose, for instance, in MPC 85, up to 15% of lactose in MPC 70, this can be a concern in the formulation. So it's not possible to replace rennet casein by MPC 1:1. You have a lot of impact. But of course, we know that this is sometimes the case when people want to reduce the cost of their recipe. The last protein will be the caseinate. So the caseinate, on the contrary to rennet casein, that's immediately soluble. When you put it in water, it's soluble. So you don't need to add the melting salt. So that's one interest of the caseinate. But I would say really the main interest is the high emulsifying capacity of the caseinate compared to the other proteins. And this makes it a unique ingredient when you have a lot of fat and when you want to make sure that your fat will be stabilized. So especially, for instance, in processed cream cheese, where the fat in dry matter can be very high, it can be interesting to add some caseinate. But usually, you will be careful with the dosage because caseinate, in terms of taste, is not neutral. You can bring some off taste. And I'm going to finish my presentation with an illustration, a video to illustrate the production of an analog cheese. So this is an analog cheese formulated with melting salt PZ7, and it was a recipe without any cheese. So you have here the detail of the recipe. So 23% of fat, 18.5% of rennet casein, 1.5% of skim milk, 1.4% of PZ7, 0.1% of citric acid, 6% of modified starch, potato modified starch, 0.7% of salt, some flavor, 0.5%, and the rest is made by water. So the description of the process, so you will see on the video, but I will just insist on some key points. As you will see in the video, we prepared the recipe in 2 steps. We didn't add all the ingredients at once in the cooker. We put first the casein and the melting salt, give some time for a good hydration, then add the rest of the recipe, namely the fat, because we don't want to shear the fat for a too long time, and the starch, because we don't want the starch to compete with the casein for the hydration. Then we'll see that we have cooked the cheese at 72 degrees, and I'll let you discover the results at the end. So let's have a look at the video. So as you see, we use a twin screw cooker to make the preparation, to make the process. So here is water, melting salt, the citric acid we added at the beginning. We could have added later as well. skimmed, that's not a problem to have it here, and rennet casein. So you see the big amount of rennet casein. Eight minutes of agitation, no heat. At the end, you get this pasty texture, homogeneous pasty texture. Then we add fat. And starch. So we started cooking with a temperature at 24 degrees. We always check the pH and adjust if necessary before cooking. So cooking takes only 2 minutes. And after 2 minutes, that's what we got. So it's already pretty good with the fibers already. But we could see that the fat was still not so well incorporated. So we gave an extra 3 minutes for stretching. And now the product is ready. That's what we wanted to get, the fibrous texture. So here, then you must be quick. So you must pack your product. So here, this is the pilot production. So we did it like this in small buckets, and the buckets in a cold water bath. Then after 1 week, we checked the texture, and this is what we got. In fact, we got a stretch over 1 meter. That's what you can see here. So thanks a lot. Thank you for your attention. And we are now moving to the Q&A session. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you for the insightful presentation. We'll now move on to the Q&A. We've got some excellent questions from the audience. So first question is for you, Mikhail. You highlighted rennet casein as the key protein in processed and analog cheese formulations. However, it's not always the most cost-effective option. In analog cheese, where milk protein content is high, what are some alternatives to reduce formulation costs?
Yeah, I agree. Rennet casein is not it's not the less expensive protein, but we tried a different formulation. We tested a lot, and my recommendation is to keep rennet casein in the recipe and to reduce it. If your concern is to reduce the cost, I would rather keep some rennet casein and replace part of it by starch. And for me, you can go up to 6-8% of starch, as you saw on the video here, without affecting the melting properties. So to sum up, my recommendation is to still keep the rennet casein. Okay, if you want to reduce the cost, replace part of it with starch. And be careful then with the type of starch that you take in. My recommendation is to use typically a potato starch, which works well in this case.
Brilliant. And then the next question is for you, Carolee. You provided a helpful overview of the processed cheese market. Could you also share some insights into the analog cheese market?
Thank you for your question. Actually, it's quite hard to find accurate data on analog cheese for different reasons. First, because analog cheese has sometimes different meanings depending the region. For example, in Asia, you don't have analog cheese. You only have processed cheese, but their processed cheese are analog cheese. So that's confusing. And also, data on analog cheese are sometimes mixed with other datas. For example, with vegan cheese datas. So it's hard to obtain precise data, precise statistics. There is another problem is that there is no specific custom codes for analog cheese, so that makes it very complicated to track and analyze the trade data on analog cheese. And so yeah, it's hard, but if you want to find some accurate trends in analog cheese, you can try to track the evolution of the pizza cheese markets and consequently the pizza markets, because we know that analog cheese is used mainly for pizza cheese. So you can have some more accurate numbers with this kind of data.
Interesting, thanks. Next question again for you, Mikhail. You mentioned the importance of controlling the grinding and mixing steps before heating. We typically add all ingredients to the cooker at once. Are there risks to this approach?
Yes, indeed. I know. I've been insisting. Yes. Again, I insist on that point. That's because hydration of the casein, of the rennet casein especially, is not that easy. You need to organize the process to make sure that the hydration will be obtained. So the question was, is there a risk? Is there a risk if we do it in just one step? I know it's the case for a lot of our customers, but for me, yes, I would say there is a risk here, a risk of inconsistency from batch to batch, because when you don't get 100% functionalized protein, sometimes you will get less firmness, sometimes more firmness, so it's not steady. And the other risk will be, you may not obtain, especially when you're making an analog cheese, you may not obtain a very good melting properties if you don't make sure that you have hydrated correctly the rennet casein at the beginning.
All right, brilliant. And last question again for you. In your analog cheese recipe, you use PZ7 as the melting salt. Can sodium citrate also be used as an alternative?
Yeah, yes, of course, yeah. So PZ7 is made of citrate plus polyphosphate, but you can use citrate, free sodium citrate alone, it works. Then the pH management of the recipe will have to be adapted, because what you have noticed with the citrate, the pH is not as stable as with the PZ7. It means that a few days after production, you will observe that the pH is increasing a lot with the citrate, which has some consequence about the texture of your product. When the pH is increasing, the product gets softer and sticky. So in order to compensate for that, with the citrate, your targeted pH during production will be adapted and lower compared to PZ7. But that's the only point you have to take care about. It's possible, yes, to make the product with citrate.
Yeah. All right, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. Thank you to our audience members and to the great questions, and also to Mikhail and Carolee for sharing your expertise. Any unanswered questions will be followed up by email, and look out for the on-demand version of today's webinar in your inbox shortly. And to stay up to date with industry news, visit foodingredientsfirst.com and sign up for all our newsletters. Thanks and goodbye for now.